I think my title is the longest title in the history of sermon titles. Sarah is agreeing, but I had thought on there. Treasured and pondered five post-Christmas New Year thoughts for 2022 and beyond. And you are dismissed. Um, so I'm going to drop five things on you today that I don't want you to encapsulate just for now. I want it to be prompting to you moving forward. We're all in different seasons of life. Okay, I can the people I can see are Gene, and of course I see Preston and Trent. I see you there, and Sarah and Kathy. You know, there are others there. And as I see you, I think of your season of life. We're all in different seasons of life, right? And so I want the five things I share with you to prompt you in your season of life as they are in my season of life. They're powerful, they're deep, and they'll change your life. Um, and the core of these are found and prompted by Luke 2. And it's the Christmas story, but yet it doesn't stay there. It's really the Christmas story and the thought at the end of this passage that pushes me to 2022 and beyond. Okay, verse 16 of Luke 2 in the NIV. They hurried off and found Mary and Joseph and the baby who was lying in the manger. And this is the shepherds, of course. And when they had seen him, I love this part, they spread the word concerning what had been told them about this child. Great, great. I wish verse 17 was something that we could spend more time on today, but that's not for today. But that's a great part. When they had seen him, they spread the word concerning what had been told them about the child. It's interesting if you look at the five senses in verse 17. They saw him, and then they shared what had been told to them. So they see and they speak, and some, I don't know if they were able to touch Jesus, but it's an interesting response from the shepherds in verse 17. And then you have the response of the shepherds in verse 17. And all who heard it were amazed at what the shepherds said to them. There's some debate and disagreement on who these shepherds were. Some believe they were lowly, poor, poverty-ridden, jungle-abiding, wilderness-living shepherds. Some believe they were priests that were shepherd-like in their duties, but they had a different role. It's unimportant at this point, but it's interesting when they went and told, they did so with such a conviction that all who heard it, another sense, you have them speaking, you have them seeing, and now you have people that are hearing. And all who heard it were amazed at what the shepherds had said to them. So it's interesting as Luke is writing this. Verse 16 is talking about the shepherds. Verse 17 talks about the shepherds. Verse 18 talks about the shepherds and the people they talk to. Verse 19 there's an immediate, distinct switch as Luke writes, and he writes this, but. That conjunction but shifts the emotion of the text, because when you read verse 16, they hurried. That's excitement, right? And they found Mary, they found Joseph. When they were looking for something, they found it. They found a baby. Trent's holding a beautiful baby that is exciting, is new. The baby was lying in a manger. And when they'd seen him, they got excited about what they had heard, about what they had been told. They shared with other people. Those people, the verse 18, they're amazed. They have all these statements. They're hurrying. They're amazed. They spread the word of all that they were hearing. And then Mary's statement, the statement about Mary, Luke writes, shifts the emotion. It almost flips it upside down. But Mary, nobody looks at a baby like a mama, that baby. Nobody looks at a baby like the father of that baby. It's just different, right? But Mary treasured up all these things. That is a very personal statement. We all treasure different things. And what is treasured to me may not be treasured to you. It's interesting. Mary treasured these. And it's the idea of, it was important to her. She looked at all these responses, people hurrying to her, how she felt about the fact that she'd just given birth to a baby and she had never been with anybody. I mean, we kind of blow that off, right? We're like, we believe in the virgin birth. Mary walked through the fact that she had just carried a baby for 9 months and gave birth to a baby And she still doesn't understand how that happened. She treasures up these things, but then the next part of the verse even shifts the emotion even deeper. She not only treasures up all these things, which is to me, that's in the moment. That's treasuring what is happening. That is treasuring what is going on. That's treasuring the fact that the shepherds came and they're excited and they share their story. It's treasuring that Joseph is like, I know I wasn't with you, but you had a baby. I believe you weren't with anybody else. This has got to be a divine miracle. She's treasuring that. It's in the moment. But then it says, and then she pondered them in her heart. Other versions say she just continuously thought about them. Very two distinct approaches to that text. Verse 19, treasuring and pondering. Treasuring, you're valuing, it's exciting. Pondering, it's like, okay, what does this mean? And it really is, what does it mean moving forward? Because as I said in the earlier hour, if she really, at the moment of giving birth to a divine baby that she had never been with anybody, that was not produced by a fallen man, to give birth to that was probably the greatest realization to Mary, that at that moment, as much as she could understand, the baby she held was the Son of God. And there's a debate right now about the song Mary, Did You Know? It's been going on for years. Don't even care. Beautiful song, beautiful lyric, beautiful tune. People are like debating, did you know? Yeah, she knew. We think she's an idiot. There's no way Mary understood anything. Mary didn't understand that. It's like saying Mary understood the virgin birth. She didn't understand that. And even have scholars like, of course she understood. She was walking through it. I walk through a lot of things I don't understand. Marriage. Anyway, for another time. I don't think she understood, but when you give birth to a baby and you've never been with a man, that helps you go, this is divine. And Mary began pondering that maybe this is the Son of God. Not that she doubted it, but she just needed more evidence. And knowing that if it is the Son of God, she knew the prophecies of what would have to happen to her baby. That's deep. There's a quote I gave Sarah that I read this week. It reads this way: faith, and by extension, prayer, is not something we can explain. It's something that needs to be experienced. Unless you've ever had a child, you have no clue how Trent feels right now by laying there holding his baby. You don't understand that. I ask people before I had kids, what's it like to have a kid? And they're like, you're just going to have them. And we did. You have to walk through this moment. And I want you to take the 5 things I give you, and I don't want you to read them and go, that's good. I want you to really take them in for 2022. That's what God is doing for me in this text. Some of this was prompted by a meeting I had a couple of days ago with a friend of mine who I didn't know what he wanted, but I needed to go spend some time with him. And sitting at his kitchen table, he asked me about my family. He asked me about my kids. We shared. He's a very special individual to me. None of you know this gentleman. If I told you who he was, you still wouldn't know him. He was been in my family for a while. And then he told me that he'd been diagnosed with terminal cancer, and that he had 3 to 4 months. And he wasn't emotionally upset. He wasn't down. I led him to Christ. I confirmed that he understood what that meant. And he goes, I got clarity on that. And only he, his doctor, and myself know. He has a daughter and a grandchild. And part of our discussion was, when do you tell them? And he was like, I'm just going to let it play out and then they'll find out. And we're discussing, she probably would like to know. And that's been part of our discussion and why he brought it up. So it was a beautiful discussion, as much as that could be. And then one of the most surreal things that I've ever seen was walking out on his back deck and him pulling out his bucket list and removing things that he knows he can't accomplish in the next 3 to 4 months. And saying, that must not have been of God. This must not have been of God. This must not have been, and marking them off and prioritizing what he wants to accomplish in the next 90 to 120 days. You don't leave that meeting the same. He said, you can tell Erica, but nobody else who it is. And I've been running through that in my heart, and I linked it up to this story of Mary taking in the moment, but yet projecting onto her future the idea of pondering these things. I want you to ponder, consider, think about 5 things. Number 1, the manger essentially was the launching of a mission. And I only say that for 2 reasons. Number 1, because I like the manger. I'm cracking up when I'm hearing you guys talk about decorating for Christmas and not decorating, or how it's done as you get older and your kids get older. Because I've got both, right? I've got a 21-year-old who just wants to be together as family because it's his last Christmas together, unmarried. And then I got 11-year-old who's like getting to bed early so he can get up early so he doesn't miss anything. And I still got that, right? And fully decorated nativity scenes. We even have a nativity scene where Joseph's head got broke, and so he's holding baby Jesus in one arm and his head in the other. And so I said, we're just going to go for it, okay? We're just going to go with it. And so we're like, it's still a big deal to us, right? And so I like that. I like the manger. I like Christmas. It's outside of Thanksgiving, probably one of my favorite times of the year. I like the music. I'm not a big music guy. I like the music. It's nostalgia for me. But the manger is like, it's not an end to itself. It's a launching to something way greater. It's the manger launched a mission. The manger began a human mission. It was divinity stepping into humanity. It was an infant that was infinite. Like the coming together of a manger was such a phenomenal event. But like we do in life, the event is it's not about the event. It's about what the event means. It's about the pondering of the mission that this event would order in, and what it precipitated. And allow me to challenge you to look at what you have going on in your life right now as a launching to a mission. Trent, you just launched a mission. Struggles many times become what we focus on, when in actuality, the struggle is trying to point us to a mission. What you doubt, what you're insecure about, what you have failed at, what you second guess, what you question, probably in some regard is a mission for you. We get so caught up in the burden and in the falling short and in the struggle and in the valley and in the season and whatever it is you frame it. And we miss the fact that this entity, this thing is not a thing. It's a rock that's to be pulled from the pouch of a shepherd and launched through the air into your giant. The manger it was a launching. Whatever you're going through right now, it was meant to be launched, and the manger was a mission. It was launching a mission, and that's what Mary was pondering. What does this mean? I like treasuring it, right? It's fun, right? This is great. What does it mean? It means something much more than what she could ever fully understand, and she was pondering that. So I want you to ponder that as you head into the new year. What is what I'm dealing with leading to? Number 2. And this one freaks people out, but let me talk about it. Confession is a catalyst. Preston made a comment last week, I think it was. I don't think it was this morning. I think it was last week where we have missed out on the fact that church is fun. And I've had people that would go to say that to me. Man, your church is so much, and they would catch themselves. because I felt guilty about saying that church had been fun. And we're quick to hold back on our confessions. I don't just mean sin confessions, okay? When you ever say the word confession, people think, nope, appreciate it, but no thanks. I don't mean confession of just bad things. I mean just confessing things with your mouth, confessing that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, confessing that we fall short every day, not just once, confessing that I don't have the answers to the majority of my questions, confessing that I need true friends in my life that are unconditional, but I probably won't ever get to that until I become unconditional. Confessing that when I go across the street to the grocery store, I'm more concerned about the fact that my wife wants me to hurry and get sugar than I am about the guy who's putting the sugar on the shelf, whose life's probably a broken, shambled mess. Confessing that I miss moments with my children. Confessing that sometimes I miss the meaning of Thanksgiving and Christmas and July 4th and the New Year's. But when you stop and confess that, when you stop and say, God, like, turn me inside out, God. It's a catalyst. It's a creator of open doors. It opens the door to the voice of God in your life with clarity. And here's why. He already knows. Confession isn't about sharing something that surprises God or takes him back. He knew how deep your life went, both in doubt, fear, sin, hopelessness, which is why he sent his son in a manger to be brutally murdered, because he knew how deep your stuff is. He's not shocked by your confession. Your spouse might be, your kids might be, but the one that's most important in this whole equation is God, and he's not shocked by our confessions. That's why confessions is a catalyst, because it's not God acknowledging my sin or my shortcomings or my need or my lack of whatever. It's me acknowledging that. God already knows. It's me agreeing what he already knows is true. And when you confess it, that's when God begins to give you grace, not so you can go, I'm okay now. No, so you can begin to push toward the mission of what he's called you to do. When you become real with who you are, that's when God becomes real with who you're going to be. It's a catalyst. Nobody knows me better than my wife. She knows everything about me. We talk about it. It's freeing. As my kids get older, my 21-year-old is like working on an engagement, working on a wedding. I'm sharing more with him about marriage and about life, and it is powerful. Confession is not just about ridding yourself of guilt. We've allowed it to become that. Can I get a witness on that? Confession is all about, here's why I'm guilty. No, confession is about, I am not enough to make this work. I don't have the capacity. I don't have the ability, but I confess Jesus Christ is the Lord of Lords and King of Kings, and he has no shortcomings. And God, I confess to you that confession is about stating all things that are real and true. And some of that does involve my shortcoming, but a lot of it involves the fact that I've never really believed that God could do great things through me if I would just yield all of myself and heart to him. I want you thinking about that as you go into the new year. Whatever your manger is right now, this treasuring that you have, your children, your gift mix, your dreams that maybe you've buried underneath your pillow and don't bring up anymore, that's probably a mission you need to pursue. Number two, confess that. Like it's a catalyst. When you're honest about it, man, it is just like it's out on the table now and you can run with it. Number three, and you may disagree with this one, and that's okay, but there's no such thing as unanswered prayer. There's just not. And to the extent that we believe that God is sovereign and Lord of Lords, he doesn't just not answer you. Everything's an answer. We come to Christ with a very shallow belief that he is infinite, almighty, all-powerful King of Kings. And I say shallow because we only believe that to the extent that it can help us. We're like, he's King of Kings. What do I need? When I have a leak, I call a plumber. When I have a light issue, I call an electrician. Why? Because they can help me. It's not because I believe they're almighty. Right? I just believe, hey, that person for this thing can help me. And we tend to put God in that category. He's Lord of everything, so he can help me get through this moment. It's so much deeper than that. And therefore, when we pray in that shallow context, and we don't feel a change or a movement, we're like, okay, God's not answering my prayer. The truth is, God, listen, he always hears you. Always. He hears you so much that Paul even said he understands your groanings and your utterances that you don't even understand. Not like he's trying to make the point to you that if you just utter, like if you just groan, if you sigh, if you're depressed, he understands that. Imagine when you verbalize it, you move all of heaven. God has answered prayers in the last 2 days of my life. And there's nothing dramatic about it. Like there's no big movement of God. Like he didn't, we don't have 9 children now. Like he didn't there's not like of course I'm not praying for that either. But there's no dramatic shift in my life. But there have been 2 or 3 things that God has answered in my life, just in conversation with a couple of my kids that I've been praying about. I started praying about 10, 15 years ago. God always answers your prayers. But we assume, listen, we assume that when we say God answers our prayer, that he answers what we're asking for. Now, he doesn't answer always what you're asking for. He goes way deeper than that. It's like, it would be like joining a baseball team and being told that when you hit the ball, you can only run to first. You can't run any further. You can, that's the rule. You can only run to first. It's like being told that. So every time you hit the ball over the fence or you hit it over the fence, you run the first and stand there. That's how we view prayer. It's like, okay, God, this prayer is for me. I have needs. You're God. Help me out, God. It's like there's so much deeper than that. Prayer is not about you getting what you want. Prayer is about God changing who you are so that you can go do what he called you to do. And in that vein, God always answers your prayers in some facet, in some form. There are no unanswered prayers. That's a whole discussion. I almost didn't include that one. But I'm telling you right now, when you pray, God hears, and when you pray, God moves. He doesn't always wave a magic wand because he's not a vending machine. He's God. When you ask him for something, he knows what's best for you, and he answers that prayer. Number 4, Satan's not omnipresent. Your self-defeating thoughts seemingly are. Let me tell you how I came to this one, okay? And I shared this a little bit last week. If Satan had to pick somebody to attack personally, I'm 100% certain it's not me. For 2 reasons. Number 1, I got enough problems on my own that he knows that he has set an emotion that I'm working on. He doesn't need to show up to make them active. They're well and good on their own. Number 2, there are people around the world doing much greater things than I am. I have them on my prayer list. Franklin Graham, Rick Warren, Ed Young, Andy Stanley, Charles Stanley. I could name 1,000 names of people that I would look at, and if I had to compare, and I don't, but if I did, I'd be like, they're reaching more people. Like they're global. They're 10,000 people a week are coming to so I don't think Satan's really worried about Matt Pettit. Well, then, so I've heard pastors say this, and Gene, you probably have heard this. Well, most of you probably have. Well, Satan's omnipresent, but his demons, right? They're the prince and power of the air, so they're always kind of, on you and all that. I don't know if I believe that. I believe they could be, and I do believe that the prince and the power of the air. So I do believe that is real. I do believe that that is something that can happen. I am more so learning that things that I believe and don't believe are so real in my life, they create their own self-limiting, finite response in my day-to-day life. I don't need any help from anybody else. It's already here. I'm already broken. I'm already fallen. It's like walking through, like when we lived out west and you walk through a casino to go to the bathroom. The bathroom's on the other side of the casino on purpose, and it's just smoke filled. And by the time you got to the bathroom and back out, man, you smelled like smoke. And if somebody came up who didn't know you, they would assume what? You smoke. Why? Because you smell like you smoke. You just, and it was like I'd have to go home and change. When you live through something, it does not disengage from you just because you are no longer living in it. Gene, you and I with legalism, it tends to, like, if I have a default on a meter, I default back that way, right? I default to judgment and comparison and who's doing a greater work and beating myself up over maybe I prayed for 10 minutes. I probably should have prayed for 12. Okay, and tomorrow I'm gonna pray for 12. So tomorrow I pray for 12, and God's like, I think it's God. You probably should pray for 15. And I pray for 15. God's like, that one guy back in the 1800s, he prayed for an hour a day. I'm like, okay, and it's just never ending. That's my default. It's in me. I'm broken and I'm fallen, and the things I should do, I don't. The things I shouldn't do, I do. I don't need Satan's help. I do a good enough job on my own. Your self-defeating thoughts, the way you think, what you think about, are essential. I'm going to share this, and then I'm going to get to my last point. I want you to think about that going into the new year. And I want you to ask yourself the question, what do I think about first thing in the morning? What's the last thing I think about at night? When I go through a crisis, what do I run to? I have friends in my life that run to alcohol. Some run to drugs. Some run to pornography. Some run to self-effacing. I have friends that are family members that are very suicidal. When you go in crisis mode, what do you run to? Those reoccurring thoughts have been downloaded in us for so many years. They're just default. You don't even have to try. They just happen. And they are self-defeating. Paul talked about casting down vain imaginations. As a man thinks in his heart, so is he. And I'm telling you right now, Satan knows he doesn't need to come visit with me because I already got it. And I fight it every day. So I want you to think about what you think about. I love to read. My older two are now becoming readers. They love to read. And when I read the Bible, and when I read other books, I don't always read a chapter and lay it down and my life is radically changed. But if you understand the power of the brain, you understand that thoughts and words and phrases and adjectives and verbs and nouns and scripture, when you put that in your heart, it never leaves. And I'll give you the same analogy that I've given to you for years. You take a cup that's got coffee in it. Gene, sometimes when you and I and whoever others of you that drink coffee and there's a little bit left in the cup, right? And I want to get a fresh cup, I'll go and I'll run water in it. If you ran water into a coffee cup, at first it would just mix with the coffee and it would be yucky. But eventually, if you let the water keep running, eventually the cup would fill up and it would run over. And eventually, if you let it run long enough, it would eventually displace the old coffee and it would be fresh water if you let it run long enough. My cup runs over. You want to empty yourself of stuff? Fill it up with something else. You got defeating thoughts, self-doubt, and attacks. Listen, can I just be honest with you for a second? I don't need you to be critical to me. I got that covered. I'm critical about myself. I don't need your help. You know what? So you're an idiot. I'm like, I'm aware of that. I tell myself that all the time. But listen, and I'll go to number 5 and give me 30 seconds. The minute I stop blaming it on Satan is the minute I start fixing it. Can Satan visit and cause? Of course. Can the prince of the power of the air and the demons and those oppressions make me? Absolutely. I'm not saying that, but I am saying that once after that stuff's downloaded in me, it takes a lot to get that undownloaded, to get it flushed out. And it takes a lot to replace it. Scripture, music, worship, friends, people saying good things, reading good things. I want you to think about your confessions, what you're saying out loud. Number 5, in light of number 4, really, personal growth in Jesus Christ is the greatest key to massive kingdom work. It's not preaching. It's not leading worship. It's not creating strategy. It's not growing a big church. Personal growth in Jesus Christ is the greatest key to massive kingdom work, because your example speaks way more volumes than your words. And that's why when I sat with my friend and he went over his bucket list and he removed stuff off of it that wasn't important, because he realized I only have 3 months. I got 90 days, got 120 days. You drive home thinking about your life differently. And I realize that if I want to find what's really priority-wise important, I've got to engage with Jesus, and I've got to grow in grace. It's not ironic that Peter says, grow in grace. Paul said to Timothy, run to grace. Because our finite natural recoil is to run to judgment. It's to run to comparison. It's to run to, we're finite under a curse, and we live that out. When the truth is, God has called you to more. And that struggle is a mission. And God's answering your prayer. And there are things that I want you to ponder heading into the new year. Think about what you think about. Confess with your mouth. Let me close with this. I would challenge you to find a good friend and be vulnerable with them. We don't do that well. We're not vulnerable well. I'm not saying share your dirty laundry with everybody. That's not what I'm saying. Because being honest with somebody is not about the other person. It's about you. It's about saying, you know what? Here's who I am. Here's what I know God's going to do with that. That's a powerful thing. You know who did that? Almost every writer in Scripture. You read Paul's works, he was like, I am the chief. Like, you talk about sin, I am the chiefest of those. Things I should do, I don't. Things I shouldn't do, I do. Abraham, Moses, Peter. I mean, just go read. These guys were like, this is who I am. And God took who they were in their confession and created a mission that lives to this day. And I submit to you that Mary, in verse 19, she treasured and then she pondered. And she changed the world. She realized the baby she held would be the baby that would save the world. And that is something to ponder. Father, I love you. Lord, I confess that I don't know how to make 2022 better than 2021. I don't even know if that should be my goal, because you don't really work on better best. You created day and night for us because we needed it, not you. You don't need air, light, hope. Like, you are all those things. So I don't know if I should think about having a better year. I just need to think about you launching your purpose in my soul and getting close enough to you to where your love for me catalyzes an energy that is just insatiable in regards to fulfilling the mission you've called me to do. Thank you that you answer my prayers. Thank you that you've given me the opportunity to confess, not for you, but for me, who I am, so that you can take who I am and make it who you called me to be. I love you. Give you this moment. I give you these people. I give you these words. I pray these things in the name of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. Amen.